Hello everyone, and welcome to the special episode of ProductNet from ProductNet community. Today we are going to talk about .NET 9 release. In case if you are not aware, I think previous week Microsoft had a 3 days event, which is called .NET Conf. This is online conference that Microsoft conducts every year, and during that conference, Microsoft, as a rule, releases the new version of the .NET platform. So during that conference, there are a lot of speakers from Microsoft Teams, community sessions, really a lot of interesting content. And in case if you are interested in particular topics, you can explore the website, go to the YouTube channel, and find the appropriate session for you and do a deep dive with the experts from Microsoft and from the people who are really doing the contributions to the platform itself. So today we are just going to briefly go through all the new features of .NET 9. We will be talking about, of course, language capabilities, ASP.NET Core, runtime, and so on. But because obviously we are not going to make this event very long, so we will try to go briefly through each of these features. Again, if you are interested in something, you can go to the website, you can go to the YouTube channel and find the appropriate session and drill down into the interesting topics. So yeah, I think we can make a start. And Volodya, I think we will start from the C# 13 capabilities and some library additions that we will get in .NET 9. Well, we've already got.
Do you see my screen?
Yeah, we do.
Okay,
we do.
yeah, let's continue. So what we have in C# 13 is a lot of small features in comparison with C# 12, where we had such major changes as collection expression, primary constructor, you'll like it or not, but it was a huge change. In this release, we have a few minor improvements, mostly targeted to performance and mostly requested by .NET Runtime team itself to be able to optimize performance, to reduce allocations, to improve processing time and throughput and so on. And let's review these features in a kind of live demo format. First one is a params collection. Let me comment this book. So params. Prior to C# 13, we had only one way to define params parameter with params and array type of expected type. It had a kind of hidden cost for allocating of entries on the caller side, which was not obvious for some folks. So in this release, I decided to make this API better and to allow more scenarios and allow it to be used with more collections. Actually, they allowed it to be used for any collection. It can be integrated one, like a list. It can be hash set. It can be any collection that implements a list, iCollection interfaces. It can be on read-only span or span. It can be your custom collection type if your custom collection type implements expected interface. But it cannot be dictionary because dictionary doesn't implement expected collection type. It can't be used with add method. Why they introduced such change is to be able, actually, how they call it, if you notice on this here, they call it collection expression type. So these parameters are collection expression type. And this feature plays well with collection expression feature when you have to define simple kind of collection expression on the caller side, just pass some entries here, and or you can kind of inline here. And you can allow API or target method to choose proper overload. It can be list or it can be read-only span, which will be allocated on a stack. But as you can see, there is a lot of options how you can define collection params with collection types. And for some of them, you might get kind of expected but not wanted overload behavior. You might want to enforce users to use read-only span instead of list or instead of object array, which was an old way of defining these parameters. So we have another feature which helps us here. It's called overload resolution priority. Actually, this feature is pretty simple and small and effectively represented by simple attribute called overload resolution priority, because by default in C# there are some rules of overload priority when kind of the most inherited, the most child type will have more priority than base type. So in this case, as we can see, we have read-only span and list overload, list-based overloads, and as you can see, compiler doesn't allow us to call this method because it doesn't know which one you want to use. They have the same priority. So you can define priority over your collection. The higher number will be placed on some attribute, the higher priority it will have. So in this case, when we call this method, we will get read-only span overload, but if we increase priority of list overload, we will get list-based overload. Also, it can be extended not just to params collection, to params collection or something like that. It can be used with a simple types like object and string. In this case, by default, because we have string and we have object and string overloads, string-based overload will be chosen by default. But if you want, for some reason, to force your clients to use object-based overload, you can define resolution priority. And as you can see, your clients will use object-based overload. Okay, let's move on.
Yeah, this just small comment. I think this is a nice feature for Microsoft themselves, because they will be able to introduce new APIs and enforce you to use more performant APIs by marking appropriate methods from the base class library.
Yep, so definitely. Okay, let's move on. Another addition is a new special type for lock mechanism. It's called lock. It's pretty simple. It's going to replace the old way when we had to define some object and lock over this object to increment some shared state. With a new approach, you can use special lock type, which doesn't use integrated synchronization index property of each object instance in a memory, but it will use different mechanism under the hood with the very same behavior. And there is an opportunity for runtime to optimize this behavior moving forward. And at some point, even maybe reduce size of each object that we have in memory. So you can use old way of using this mechanism, compiler will special case this, or you can use using construct, because interscope returns disposable object, or you can use kind of handwritten approach. Those 3 or 4 options are almost equal. Or if you need to, yep.
You can probably use with using and without the brackets, right? Just
it's a good question. Probably it might
maybe not.
It's better to wrap in braces, otherwise you might get unexpected scope of this using block.
And then the scope will not be as clear.
Or if for some reason your programming requires try-inter block, you can use it as well. Nice small addition from my perspective. Makes it clear of what is going to be locked and what's not.
And I also like this approach that eventually they will get rid of this index block synchronization that is that all the reference types contains.
Hopefully, it's a very, very kind of one of the biggest breaking changes that can be done on runtime level. But let's see, maybe they can optimize it away on compiler
really,
side.
yeah, really, like that's a little bit strange, right? That that by design they allowed to lock any type, even you can lock string, which is a huge anti-pattern, but you still can do that. But they allowed that initially, and now they have to deal with these decisions.
Yeah, it's for the better to use type system to do some things. Okay, let's move on. Next small addition, which is very, very like ultra small addition, is escape symbol, escape analysis symbol. It allows you to simplify formatting in the consoles where you previously had to define special symbols which can be error prone when you continue the symbols with another special symbol which will convert the whole sequence into incorrect state and you will not have what you expect. Now we have only slash and E symbol which represents the same, and if you run it you will have kind of formatted text in green because this symbols enforce console to start painting in color. Let's move on. Actually, very interesting feature, but very hard to distinguish is the improvements in method group natural types. Previously, they allowed us to assign func or action based on like any delegate types to a var, and var will decide what type it is. This feature was requested originally for minimal API by ASP.NET Core team. They implemented it, and once they implemented it, they realized that it's kind of limited. So they, in this release, they improved kind of type deduction on compiler side, allowing more method group types to be used with such approach. Let's move on. Implicit index access. It's very, I'm not sure how deep in backlog it was, but they decided to take it in this release, and currently you are able to define kind of to initialize array with indices starting from the end. So if we initialize this array and print this, it will print 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm not sure how useful it will be in real world scenarios, but probably it's better to have it than to not. Next feature, which is also targeted to improvements of performance and probably was requested by runtime team as well, is they allow to use ref and unsafe in iterators and async methods. And ref is a thing that spans and read-only spans are based on, and now you are allowed to use span directly in asynchronous method or in iterator-based method together with unsafe block. Previously, you had to extract it to separate method, call this method, deal with call stack jumps and so on. Now you can define it in async methods and allocate spans here. But compiler will protect you from leaking of this information outside of this asynchronous method. You cannot return it, you cannot pass it in some ways, but you still will be able to use it directly. Next feature for performance, which also was requested by runtime team, I suppose, is they allow to they extended constraints types. Previously, you had to constrain generic type to be able to use some information about it, but now they go opposite and they allow to specify something. And in this case, it has very interesting syntax, like allows ref struct, and you can pass a ref struct into this method. Previously, it wasn't. able to use ref structs with generic types. Let's move on. Ref struct interfaces. Previously, ref struct types were kind of limited because they weren't allowed to use to implement some interfaces, because previously compiler didn't have any tooling to kind of forbid this scenario because ref structs shouldn't escape stack. They shouldn't be boxed. So they improved compiler, and now compiler kind of years out if you decide to box your ref struct if it implements interface. If you try to cast it to interface, or you like to assign it to variable of type of interface, or you try to cast it to interface, you will have a error saying that you cannot convert your type to your interface.
Then what's the purpose? To pass to generics? Yeah, I think it's for generics. So you can expect this ref struct in a generic parameter, and also as a part of ref struct, you can also expect that it is implementing some kind of interfaces. I think that's for generics.
Or you can try to define interface with some static, with some default implementation and inherit it in some ref struct and get this functionality for free. Let's see how they use it across runtime first. Okay, more partial members. In this release, they allowed to use partial not just on methods and classes, but also on properties and indexers, because indexers are also properties. Yeah, it takes some time compiler to kick in. So there you can see also another feature, generated regis. It's a source generator based attribute which will generate implementation of this regis for you, and now you can assign this property this attribute to partial properties. It will be useful for implementation of registers, but also you can implement like partial properties for your view models. Probably guy who works with WPF will be very happy because he will not have to define a lot of boilerplate with bacon fields or some other hacks just to get something meaningful out of source generators for an I95 property changed. Okay, let's move on. And final feature, which actually wasn't released, but it's available under preview flag. You have to specify that your project uses preview version of C# 13, and you will be able to work with field keyword. So if you have some property and it's not after property, you want to implement some getter and setter with custom logic, previously you had to define backing field and deal with it. Now you can use field keyword, and as you can see on hover, this field keyword points to after generated field with kind of non-available name for you as a plain developer, because it's compiler based thing. It will play well with partial properties and source generators, I believe.
What an evolution of the properties. So the only thing that we, I think, need to wait is when they will allow to use async await in getters and setters. I think that's the last bit.
Probably with async2 experiment. Let's see. Okay, let's move on. So that's all for language updates itself. As you can see, there is not a lot of some major changes.
To the previous releases, that's not a lot at all. But maybe that's good. Then maybe that's good, because when I conduct interview sessions, usually vast majority of the candidates can't answer on the questions related to C#8 maybe, because they still use something earlier, and now they will have some time to get up to speed.
Yeah, usually people complain that there are too much new stuff to be.
Yeah, exactly.
To keep in touch.
That's like very challenging for book authors, right? Because they have to release new book every year.
Yeah, maybe it's better for them because they can sell new book every year. With some addition at the end of the book, like, okay, what's new in C# 13? Few pages. Okay, not only language was updated, but base class library for .NET framework was updated. And let's review some useful stuff related to JSON. In this release, they added a JSON schema exporter type, which will be able to analyze your type and produce JSON schema. And it respects JSON serializer options that you define, and it respects nullable annotations of your type. So as you can see, in this case, we use record type person with some GUID, first name, nullable without default value, nullable with default value. And it can generate, like we can use schema generator and generate schema as not and just produce a string of this, JSON string of this schema. And as you can see, this type object with properties which have very special name because we specified snake case, uppercase type of naming. And as you can see, unique ID, it's type string, format UID, first name, last name, total. Like it specified pattern for this value because we are allowed to write numbers as string and we need to read them as well. Address line with default value and what properties are required and that additional properties are not allowed. I think this picture plays well with new OpenAPI stuff which they added in ASP.NET Core. And might be useful for plain developer when you need to provide JSON schema for your types for some for another team or for another consumer of your API, for example. Okay, let's move on. Very requested feature, but it wasn't implemented till now. In Newton Soul JSON, you had the option to define enum member attribute and define a custom name for your enum members during serialization and deserialization. And it wasn't working in system text JSON for like since the beginning. And finally, in .NET 9, after a lot of chases, after a lot of asks in the repo, they implemented it. You can define new JSON string enum member name attribute over your enum members and specify some name which you will not be able to define as a plain enum member because it's not valid name of members. And if you serialize it, you will have expected output. Another few small but important additions is JSON zip equals implemented for more types. In this case, for JSON element, it can compare your JSON, even if it looks a little bit different, but represents the same value. Also, they provide, previously they had some problems with people misusing the JSON serializer options because it's a very high, heavyweight object which initializers and caches a lot of stuff on creation. You have to use only single instance across your application or very few. And now they allow you to use singleton instance provided out of the box without any allocations of additional stuff. And that's all for JSON and stuff. Let's move on. Not much time. Okay, what else is important for us? It's link and collections because it represents some useful stuff. So in this release, they added again performance targeted features such as alternate lookup over dictionaries. It allows you to kind of use read-only span or span-based types and reduce allocations and reduce processing time a lot. In this case, this method tries to count words in some sentence or some input. You use read-only span without strings and so on. It uses an alternate lookup and it caches value inside it. And how it's used, you just pass string inside it, and because string can be assigned kind of to read-only span of char, We can pass it here and count the words, and there will be output because it counts number of entries of each word in original sentence. Next is that the added order dictionary collection, which is useful because it under the hood orders keys inside itself. Previously, people had to implement it by hand, copy paste from project to project, and so on. Now it's out of the box. Another small but important for someone addition is they added read-only set, which represents kind of subset of functionality of hash set or set. It doesn't allow to modify its content. It can be initialized with existing hash set, and it can be useful if you want to expose a read-only set outside of your API and don't allow your callers to modify stuff. Next thing is addition of count by and aggregate by methods to link you. Now you can use them to count by something. It exposes key value pair of type, like where key is a type of property which you counted on, and number is kind of count of entries of this property. In this case, we try to count so it outputs Ahmed. So we try to find word which we see most times in original sentence. It's Ahmed. It's represented a few times, like 3. Okay, now let's move on. Aggregate. Also, we have a small but useful feature such as index. It provides a way for you to not get just current value, but index of this value in original collection. So you don't have to deal with counter, with indexer. You don't have to write it by hand. It's out of the box and with no extra a lot of allocations. Also, small but interesting feature is GUID version 7, which represents sortable value and works better with databases when you need to insert a lot of entries. It's not just random. Well, it's partially random in a range of 1 millisecond. So you can use it by hand. So you can create it, or you can create and pass datetime offset. Also, kind of last but not least is a new method over task when each. It's a common pattern when you have to kick off several operations in parallel and want to do something as soon as any of them arrives. You don't have to write your custom solutions. Now you have this method out of the box, which will be run on every execution of tasks. And that's all from my side. Thank you for your attention.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Volodya. There are some questions in the chat. I think you might know some answers, especially person Artyom is interested in if they are going. Well, you can read the questions.
Yeah, sure.
And try to answer. Artyom is interested in case if they remove index synchronization from each ref object, then how they will compute the get hash code where they will place this value, because currently this is exactly what is used for get hash code. Yeah, that's an interesting question. Maybe you know the answer. Right. Let's move on to other .NET 9 capabilities, and next few things that we're going to talk about are related to the runtime capabilities and SDK capabilities. Right. I have some slides here prepared to show what is new here. Let's start from the runtime. And just to do some warm up, to warm you up a little bit and warm up your expectations. So the first runtime feature that I'm going to talk about, it is called control flow enforcement technology for Windows. So what is it about? It is a special feature that will be enabled by default for all .NET applications that will be compiled for Windows and will be run on Windows. And actually, this feature will help to protect your applications from the technique that is called return-oriented programming exploits. So that's just an extra security level between the person who is going to hack your PC and your application, which is cool, but maybe not as excited as you expected. So I've mentioned that is the warm-up thing. You can disable it, but by default it will be enabled for Windows. Right. So if you are not excited yet, let me try to excite you with a new, with one more runtime capability, which is called .NET Install Search Behavior. So what is it about? Basically, you know that we can publish when we publish the .NET application, we can have a self-contained application that comes with its with the .NET runtime and all the libraries needed for running the library, package it in a single executable, or we can have a deployment of the application that relies on a shared .NET runtime. So before .NET 9, in case if you go with that option to use a shared .NET, then you had an option to have only one .NET of a particular version on your server. But now you can, and it has to be in a special global place that is well known by the application. So starting from .NET 9, you can actually specify the path to the runtime, and by doing that, you can have like multiple applications deployed to a single server, but they can use shared runtimes, and there could be several shared runtimes. I'm not sure that it will be widely used, but I think they are just closing some gaps in that thing, and maybe there will be some people who will utilize that new capability. All right. So now let's move on to some serious things, yeah, and let's talk about the data's capability. Data's means dynamic adaptation to the app size. As you may know, that currently garbage collector has two options, two modes, basically two modes how it works. So there is a workstation mode and the server mode, and the garbage collector in both these modes behaves slightly differently. So when it comes to the server mode, garbage collector becomes much more greedy, so it allocates more memory, reserves more memory because it's a server. Come on, so we can utilize the available RAM to get some performance benefits. But what Microsoft realized that in vast majority of the applications, this greedy allocation leads to the fact that a lot of memory is being allocated but not really used. So that's why they introduced this data's capability, which actually works in the way like GC analyzes the real allocation of the application, and in case if the particular amount of RAM is not really needed, so it can release some memory that is not really used. And actually, in their tests, they noticed that in vast majority of the applications, .NET can really release a lot of memory when it comes to the server mode, because actually there are not so many allocations in most of the apps. There is obviously a slight disadvantage of that approach. It is a reduction of the throughput if it's, let's say, a SPNet core, but Microsoft promises that it shouldn't be more than 2 or 3%. So that's data, and for people who are using .NET applications to deploy, to package and deploy them to, let's say, Azure functions or Lambdas, such significant memory reduction in the way how garbage collector is working might be very significant. It could be disabled, but by default, this feature will be enabled. Yeah, so let's move on, and that's not really a feature, but just a thing that we should talk about is performance. So I saw that a lot of you are excited about the performance improvements in .NET 9, and yeah, really, it was like more than 350 performance-related pull requests. So Microsoft and contributors really tried to optimize a lot of things in the across the whole framework. So they did optimizations in it just-in-time compiler, so it can produce better code in particular cases. Dynamic PGO, so this profile guided optimizations, it also gets some improvements. So now it can optimize more things based on the instrumentation that were made by this PGO capability. Object stack allocation and inlining. So this is a slightly new, not so slightly, but this is a new for .NET world, but this capability existed in Java. So in some cases, runtime might recognize that a particular reference type might be allocated on stack. So as a result, obviously, stack allocated object will not have to be garbage collected then. And that's one benefit. So another benefit is that for stack allocation of stack allocated objects, .NET Runtime can do what is called promotion. So promotion means that some of the properties, some of the fields of the stack allocated objects could be placed into CPU registers, and that as a result, the computations with those fields will be much faster. So this is a really nice addition to the .NET Runtime, as I've already mentioned, that existed in Java. Now it comes to .NET. It's still early like stage, but soon I think we will get more optimizations based on that capability. What else? So obviously better native IoT code, more spans API. Spans are really now everywhere in the base class library. More collection and link updates. Some of them were mentioned by Volodya. And really many other things. If you really want to dive into the performance improvements, I highly recommend to go through this article by Stephen Taub. This guy is really focused on the performance improvements of .NET, and each time he produces like very detailed articles when he describes most of the performance optimizations that were made and shipped to the .NET runtime. All right, so what's the numbers? So Microsoft committed to optimize the performance. So what's the reality? So actually, as usual, Microsoft submitted the recent version of ASP.NET Core to TechEmpower benchmarks to test the results of their work, and they saw a 15% of the request per second performance improvement in TechEmpower benchmarks and JSON tests. But what is really impressive is the memory reduction that they also noticed comparing to .NET 8. So according to their statistics, .NET 9 consumed 93% less memory in the same test versus .NET 8. So that's a huge memory reduction. So obviously such a bright result is caused by the huge virtual machine, huge server that is used for the TechEmpower benchmark tests. It is like Intel processor with 56 cores, and so usually garbage collector in a server mode, it allocates a dedicated heap per core, and so it's obvious that such amount of reserved memory for heap is not really needed for this TechEmpower benchmark. So that's quite artificial test. Let's see how this how .NET 9 will behave in our applications, but numbers look promising, really. And one more example regarding the performance. So this time is not from Microsoft, this is from community. There is a library that is called ace.net. So ACE is a special protocol that is used for exchanging the information about the ship's location, and ace.net is a library that is dealing with the protocol, with this ACE protocol. And the author, what author of the library just did, he just upgraded the package to the .NET 9 and run his performance tests and realized that really .NET 9 is faster, 9% faster comparing to .NET 8. So which is still quite impressive. So having just 10%, 10% of the performance gains for free, just basically because you upgraded your .NET version is super cool. So he hadn't had to change anything in the code. He just upgraded the version of the .NET. That's super cool. Right. So what else I'm going to talk about? Basically, I would like even to do some small demo. I've already mentioned that I really like the way how Microsoft exposing high-performance APIs to the developers who are not very deep in these topics. And I'm going to show really quickly two examples of the two APIs that are dedicated to provide high-performance capabilities in very common cases. So it's get alternate lookup methods that we can use for dictionaries and search values. So let's quickly go to the Visual Studio and explore them. Get alternate lookup. So imagine that we have a quite large file with a lot of text, and we want to count all the words in this text. We want to. So obviously, what we need to do, we need to split this. First we need to read the text, then split it into the words, and then we can go through each word and place the word in a dictionary. And in case if this is the first time when you are checking this word, then you are placing this word and assigning the one value. Otherwise, you are incrementing the value that is already in the dictionary. So there is some code that is measuring the performance of this operation, and there is also some code that is measuring the allocated memory for such for these things. Actually, right now I'm going to run code. So this is the code without get alternate lookup capability, and let's see the results. Okay, sorry, I think I'm going to stop it and run without the debug mode, because in that case the results will not be very clear. Let me try to, one sec. Visual Studio is not very fast. Second. Okay, so now I'm running the code without a debug mode. Now let's see how fast it is. So the operation actually takes like 2 seconds, and the allocation, you can see it's basically 140 megabytes, so it's in kilobytes, so we need to divide it into 1,000. Yeah, so not very slow, yeah, but the allocation is quite significant. Now let's see what will happen in case if instead of the dictionary, I will get an alternate lookup for this dictionary, and we'll use this data structure instead of the dictionary. The code looks very similar, yeah, to the previous one, but obviously because it's get alternate lookup from read-only span, I have to deal with spans, but that's not really complicated thing. Code is very similar, and now let's try to run one more time, and let's see what will happen. Okay, so the performance, yeah, it's quite similar, right? It's quite similar. Obviously, sometimes it's slower, sometimes it's faster, but definitely it is very close. But what is really important is the allocation. As you can see, there is a 0 allocation for this code, and that's just amazing. So instead of doing the garbage collection, our application will be able to concentrate on executing some business logic because of this alternate lookup scenario instead of plain dictionary, which is super cool. Now let's move on to the next example. It's about search values. Again, so pretty common task. Let's say we have a set of words and we have a long text, and we want to go through the text and check how many times do the words that we have are met in this large text. So again, so code is quite straightforward. We are going through the all the words in our text, And then we are going to check if any of the words in our array are the iterated, are really equal to the iterated word. And if yes, then we increment the count. Otherwise, we are not changing anything. So let's run this code and see the results. All right. So we need to wait because the code is not as fast as the previous one. Yeah, as you've already got the idea. So it's 7 seconds, and huge amount of allocations are happening because of the link usage. So just abnormal amount of allocations. Now let's do the following. Let's use the new data structure that is called a search value. That is a specially optimized data structure for some of the types, not for all. For strings, obviously, it is optimized. And instead of using the link code, let's use this search value and use a contains method that is part of the search value class. And now let's run the code one more time and see the impact of the change. All right, you've already noticed that the time of execution time is like twice less, approximately, and the allocation was reduced significantly, dramatically, I would say. So it's like much more faster, and the allocation is not as greedy as with the previous example. So definitely worth to use instead of link in case if you have such kind of scenarios. And it's like it's really easy to use data structure. So highly recommend to start utilizing it in your code in case if you have an opportunity to do that, because it's much more faster than the approaches that we had before. Right. Search values. Now let's move on to the SDK capabilities, and let's see what is shipped when we download and install .NET SDK. The first one is, yeah, okay, I see that time is moving, so I need to speed up. Okay, let's do really quick exploration of the SDK capabilities. So the first one, unit tests. Now we can control the parallel execution with the flags when we run .NET test command through the CLI. What else? .NET tool roll forward. So this is the way to run the tools on a newer versions of .NET in case if you don't have a tool for the particular version. Terminal logger. So now when you use the .NET CLI, you will see that the output is much nicer, colored, dynamic. Again, nothing, you don't have to do anything with that, just enjoy. NuGet security audits. Now the security is being checked for the dependent packages, so not only for direct references. And the last one, containers. So you can build containers with the .NET. That's not new, but now you can push the containers to unsecured registries such as HTTPS or that are located on your local host. So that was a gap. Now it is closed. All right, so that's it. As you can see, not a lot of things were shipped in the runtime and the SDK, but again, so nice improvements, and maybe that's even good that we didn't get, as usual, huge amount of improvements. At least we can hold on for a while and learn what was shipped during the previous versions. Cool. Alexander, now I think we can move on to the ESP.NET Core.
Right, give me a moment. I'll start sharing my presentation. Okay. Hope you can see it. Okay, so I want to talk about what's new in ASP.NET Core and the Blazor. The agenda will be the Blazor itself, some API, open API news, and general enhancement. And let's start from Open API. In this .NET release, the Swagger was not a part of the default template. Microsoft decided to remove it. And as they explain it, it is basically because of the Swagger was not well supported since the last few years. And in reality, the situation has changed. The Swagger now has new maintainer, new supporter, which is much more responsible and active. But anyway, Microsoft decided to go with their own solution, and as a result, we have a new NuGet package, Microsoft ASP.NET Core Open API. We can include it manually, and it will be added by default into new solutions created with .NET 8, right? And our code, we have to add one line of code, app map Open API, and it will enable the support Open API document generation. And the actual documentation will be available by URL openapi-v1.json. Currently, this library doesn't have so much functionality as Swagger has, but I suppose they will be enhanced. One thing that it has, it is support trimming and support native IoT compilation. One more thing that they had to do to support OpenAPI is add new extension for JSON serializer, as Vladimir already mentioned it. And it is ability to generate a JSON schema based on the type. And here in this slide, you can see that we have a user, call this getJSON schema as node, and as a result, we see the JSON schema. Yeah, I want to show you short demo about how it actually works. Okay, as I mentioned, to support OpenAPI from Microsoft, we had to include this package on OpenAPI. And in the code, we had to add this line, map OpenAPI. I already have it run. If we will go the API v1, you'll see that we have this JSON document. So I said that by default, we don't have a Swagger, but nothing restricts us to add it back. So we just need to install the Swagger package, /backhouse build the core Swagger UI, and register it here, right? And it will be available again. Pretty familiar interface, right? And one more thing, so for those who don't like Swagger, who want to use something different, you can use some another library. Like the most popular from alternative it is Scalar, and you have to install this package and register it here. Map Scalar, and it will be available here. It looks a bit different than Swagger, but the idea is the same. So we have endpoints that we can run and receive results. Okay, move on. Next topic, it is Blazor. In every .NET release, Microsoft is doing a lot of work to improve this product, and this time is not exclusion. And they are saying that we have the throughput more than 50% and the memory usage lower than 90%. So it is because of this smart garbage collector. Of course, they are kind of speculating here, as Alexei is saying, because it is this high core count machine in this really edge case. Also, they're saying we have less times startup time, more than 25%. I think it is because of IoT support and enhancement in the JSON. And a few more interesting things that we have WebSocket message compression and pre-compression and improvement caching. It's kind of more aggressive caching. So these two things affect the user experience. It depends how the responsive of your application will be. Next thing that they added, it is .NET Aspire support for Blazor application. You can easily right-click on your Blazor app and add container orchestrator support. It will create for you a new app host project, which will be responsible for up and running all applications in your solution. And as a result, you have this nice Aspire orchestrator page, and yeah, that's useful. Next thing, they added render mode detection at runtime when it's useful. For example, if you have some components with server-side rendering, these components will, and we need to do special logic depends from where it is rendered. It can be used here. So since component loaded, just loaded static generated from the server, you can, for example, display, for example, one moment, please, here. And when it's full loaded, you can enable the full functionality in the page. One more thing that they changed, that is new reconnection logic. If you remember in the past, when our application lost connection with the server, we had to manually click a button to refresh the page. Now it is happening automatically. You will see this spinning progress bar here, and since connection will be restored, it will disappear and the page will be updated accordingly. Next thing, it is new template for MAUI Blazor. It is called MAUI Blazor Hybrid Web App. Boom, boom, boom. What is it? So in the picture, see that we'll have a MAUI app here. This application is kind of cross-platform app, which will be targeted to Windows, Android, iOS, Mac, and so on. And the bottom of the list, you see the .web project, that you just general web app, and the all code here, Blazor code, placed in the shared project. Yeah, and the last topic, it is some general enhancement. The first point is static asset delivery optimization. So it is just they enabled the more aggressive caching for them, and it is speed up the process of page loading or reloading. Another thing, it is enhancement in the development exception page. They changed a bit the representation of it, added few more tabs here, and metadata in the routing tab. You can see it in this presentation. Yeah, one more thing, it is enhancement in the debugger and debugging, especially for dictionary. Before, if you remember, in the first column, we had a number, ordered number in the dictionary. Now we see the actual value of the key. Pretty useful. And of course, they introduced updates in their templates, as usually. Angular and React version updated, Bootstrap version updated, and so on. And the last thing that they are doing in every release is improvement in the monitoring and tracing. Especially it is useful in case of using with Aspire. Pretty looks pretty cool. Yep, and that's it. That's all that they introduced into ASP.NET Core. Not a lot, actually.
Yeah, again, but maybe that's even better.
Yeah, maybe. Yep, thank you.
Okay. Artur, would you like to tell us about the AI?
Yeah, let me share my screen. Please let me know if you can see.
Yeah, we can.
Okay, yeah, today I'm going to talk about some new features related to Aspire and AI from .NET conference, and some agenda. At the beginning, we are going to talk regarding .NET Aspire and some demo for it, and at the end, I'm going to talk regarding the AI updates. And what is .NET Aspire? Yeah, it's a set of tools and templates that enable us to create observable and production-ready application. And sorry, okay. And during the presentation, I mean, from .NET Conf, they presented some new features that are available now, like support of Azure and Python projects, added waiting functionality, added some custom scripts that you are able to add to dashboard. Also added some stop and restart functionality, because before you was able to restart your containers via dashboard only if you deploy your application to cloud. Locally, you weren't available to do it. Also, .NET Aspire workload was replaced to Aspire SDK. Also, they added some support .NET Aspire in Visual Studio Code, and created a GitHub repository with Aspire community integrations, and the name is .NET Aspire Community Toolkit, where you are able to see what integration are supported, and maybe you can find existing integration for your purpose, or you can contribute to create a new integration for your purpose. And let's go to the demo, because I believe more interesting to see what was really changed. Here are the applications that I presented during the retrieval augmented generation event, and the application was built with .NET Aspire, and I've already migrated to a new version of .NET Aspire, and new features are available for me. And first of all, as I mentioned, you're able to add .NET Aspire orchestration via Visual Studio Code and to your existing application when you click from the drop-down menu this particular option, app host and service defaults projects will be created. And as I mentioned, the Aspire team get rid from the Aspire workload, and now we just need to install apphost NuGet package, and it will work. And let's start with the first feature. It's a container lifetime. Now you're able to set the lifetime of the container. In particular case for SQL Server and Qdrant databases, I choose persistent lifetime. What it means? It means that now your containers will keep alive independent on the state of the app host project. For instance, if you shut down or the whole Aspire application, those two containers will be available for use, and next run of the app host will reuse the same containers. It's useful, for instance, if you have a time-consuming operation, for instance, seed operation. Instead of every time seed the same data to the same containers, you can just choose persistent lifetime, and all seeding process will be only in the first run. For the further runs, it will be the same container. Also, they started support of Python application. Before, in my case, I choose approach like just add a container integration, and to apply it, I created an image with specific name. It just say, okay, just run this container. But now we are able to add Python app integration, where we need to say the location of our application and commands for running the Python application. But I would say it won't work from the box. because in real, to support this, first of all, you need to create a Python virtual environment and activate it. After that, you need to install all packages that you need for correct work of the application. And moreover, the name of the virtual environment should be .venv. Without it, your application won't start and you will receive some exceptions. It's interesting. And also they added some capabilities like wait for. It means that if you depended on the healthy state of some containers, and without it, your particular project won't work correctly. In this case, you can just say wait for, in my case, like DB and sparse API. And only after that, the worker will start its work. And I'm going to run the application, .NET Aspire, to show some features that were added to dashboard. And 1 second, please. Okay. Hurry up. Okay. Here is dashboard with all running applications that consist of the solution. And as you can see, we have a sparse API project that in unhealthy state. And as you can see, worker has waiting state. It means that it will be in waiting state until the sparse API is healthy. As soon as it's healthy, the worker will start the process with seizing some data. Also, we can see that some pinned icons in dashboard. It means that these particular containers have a persistent state, and they will be available in next run of the application as well. Also, some buttons were added like stop and restart. As I mentioned, only in cloud you was able to do it, but now locally you're able to do it as well. As you can see, it's running state as well. Okay, that's all regarding the new features in
Very
.NET
nice improvements,
Aspire.
Very nice ones. So there is a question, maybe if you know the answer, what kind of functions Aspire supports? Is it in process or isolated?
Do you mean Azure Functions?
I think, it was about Azure Functions.
It supports in isolation. It will create their sandbox environment, in container, and it will be run the Azure function inside of it. But it's production ready. It means that if it works inside of this sandbox, it will work in cloud as well. Okay, next. And also, David Fowler presents some plans related to .NET Aspire. Let's start with some topics like hot reload. In the future, they're going to add some capabilities like if you change something in the code, you can just click hot reload and only this particular container will be restarted and without restarting of the whole application. I believe it will be so useful. Also, they're going to add some better polyglot support for some languages like Rust, Go, etc. Going to add some proxies and networking. They're going to add to YARP support in the future. Also, they're going to add some capabilities similar they have in CodeSpace in GitHub for team development. And they're going to add some support of new deployments because now you are able to deploy your .NET Aspire application to app services on Azure, but in the future you will be able to deploy to, for instance, to Kubernetes. And yeah, that's all regarding the .NET Aspire. You know, a lot of talks were related to .NET Aspire and AI, but from my perspective, they were very related to like general purpose, yeah, without new capabilities. So yeah, for instance, like for AI, not so many updates, but a lot of talks. They regarding the update, they added a new package, the name of Microsoft Extension AI. It's a unified interface for AI integration. I'm going to show later regarding it. Also, again, they mentioned that now we have official OpenAI package for .NET and some also integration with GitHub models. But for me, for start point related to AI and some useful videos for start point where you can understand what is AI, how you can integrate to your application, because you know, they mentioned a good thing like AI integration. It's not only chatbot, like receive some answer to your question. You can add AI capability like summarization, sentiment analysis, evaluation, etc. But without like chatbot capability. And let's go to the demo related to AI. It's small application, but to show the capabilities of AI extension package. We have some interfaces like embedding generator and in chat client interfaces that enable us to receive an embedding and have some completions with different providers. For instance, if you want to communicate with OpenAI, you just need to set up a OpenAI client with specific model. But for instance, you would like to use the same interfaces with local development. In this case, you can just set up Llama embedding generator or Llama chat client, and without changing the whole logic in your application, you will receive the same functionality. And also, I'd like to highlight that it's not replacement of semantic kernel. It's like a new layer of abstraction on top of it, because semantic kernel, it's pretty complicated, I would say, and with huge amount of functionality. But if you need a common case for using AI, you can just use Microsoft Extension AI with their generic interfaces like embedding and chat client and integrate to your application without complicated stuff with semantic kernel. I believe like a start point for common cases, it's a good candidate here for using. And that's all. Thank you from my side related to Aspire and AI.
Thank you, Artur. Right. I think that's really it that we wanted to show with you today. As I've already mentioned, we tried to put as much important information about the recent releases as possible. I hope you learned something new. Somebody might even decide to start utilizing .NET 9 based on the information that they got. And again, if you want to drill down into particular topic, you can find the video from the conference and watch from the people who contributed to Microsoft and investigate that topic more deeply. And for now, I wish you a good luck and happy introduction of .NET 9 on your project, smooth and happy introduction of .NET 9 on your project. And I think we can wrap up. Right. Thanks, folks.
Nobody want to wrap up.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.